What is going on, lovely ladies? Welcome back to the channel. As promised, I'm going to give you the second part, which is probably the most important part, measuring, picking out the best skirt for you. Skirts are beautiful, they're elegant, they're just half of a dress. And speaking of dresses, I feel like I just picked this random t-shirt because I feel like I'm wearing the same 3 dresses because I only have 3 in a row. And you can't see any skirts that I'm wearing from this angle, so it just looks really boring. What you'll find is that when you transition, your bank account's gonna hurt just a little bit. You're basically picking out an entire new wardrobe for you. And picking it out with some thought in mind is very helpful in the long run. Men's size to women's size is not as complicated as you think. There are just some basic principles, and in a lot of ways it's just going to depend for you, okay? So we're gonna get right down into measurements and types of skirts, but if you do not know a lot about me in particular, my name is Dimitria. I'm here to make you the long, cool woman that I know you can be. So I do have an Instagram and I do have a Facebook page, so be sure you're following me there and you're all connected. And if you like videos like this, please give me a like and subscribe because you will not want to miss what is going on next. One of the first things you get as a lady is to get one of these, a plastic measuring tape. You could use the metal ones, but for one thing, they're not very comfortable. They're very, very cold. And in the way that they bend, they're just not gonna measure properly. There are 3 fundamental measurements that are gonna be very important to you in picking out any type of clothes. It could be for a skirt, it could be for a dress, it could be for leggings. All of these are going to apply. If you know your chest/bust, if you know your waist and hips, that's gonna be a very vital guide to you. And it makes things a hella lot easier. Before we get right down into measuring for skirts, the very important thing about women's sizes, here's how they work. There is typically I have like my chart right here, there is the extra small and then up to an XXL. Very, very general. You'll either get letters or you'll get numbers. A medium will match a 8 or a 10. That is very general. And the reason I'm saying that is because every single store is gonna be different. So a medium or a size 8 in Lululemon might be a small 6 at H&M. So every store, every brand is gonna have its own idea of measurements. But as long as you know your chest, waist, and hips, you can kind of adjust it to every single store. With a skirt, all you need to know are your waist and hips. With a dress, you need to know your chest, and once we get into dresses, I'll tell you how to kind of create boobs for you to measure, because a lot of us don't have them yet. So you're gonna take your measurer, okay? It might be a little soul crushing to figure out your waist and hips. After a while, it becomes a battle scar. Measure your hips and measure your waist. For your waist, you're going to measure your natural waistline, as in the slimmest part at the waist. In terms of hips, when you measure your hips, it's essentially the largest, widest part of your hips. For example, I'll give you mine. Don't kill me. In terms of my waist, I measure at 32 inches. Whereas with my hips, I'm roughly, I guess, about 39.5 inches. Time to measure as I make you watch this hypno thing I made. So now we know what our actual size is gonna be. This is gonna be a weird thing, and this is something a lot of people tell me is very, very strange. And I want you to know that cis women deal with this as well. This is when your proportions, the measurements that you just made, give you inconsistent results in the size you're going to pick out. So what I mean by this is I'm gonna throw a chart at you. Say your waist is a 31. Your hips end up being a 36. This is very contradicting because on one hand, if you follow your waist, you're likely gonna be around a 12. But if you follow your hips, it's giving you a 4. Those are very, very drastic sizes. So the reason this might be incredibly drastic for you is because you don't have the widest hips. If you don't use hip enhancers, if you have not taken hormones, your hips are typically going to be a little bit on the thin side. So that's going to give you weird results when you're picking out stuff. And I want to let you know, cis women deal with this as well. I have been on hormones for 2 years. I tend to have a little bit larger hips than before. Say if I were to take these two measurements, all right? My waist is 32 inches. So if I were to take a look at that, I would be a 12, whereas my hips are 39 and a half, which brings me to a 10. So I could be a 10 or a 12, a medium or a large. When you are picking out stuff, make sure everything fits. So if you're taking waist, hips, or in some cases a chest or bust, make sure it fits all of them. So if your hips are giving you the biggest size, choose that size. So make sure everything is going to fit. Again, this is a little bit on the general side because in some instances, this might end up being that it doesn't fit your waist very, very well. It could be very, very loose. But in some instances, this is a pleated skirt. It was one of the first things I ever bought. It is fantastic. I love it. But my body has changed a little bit. Not that much. I can probably still rock this, but this is a size 10. This is from H&M. Or wait, Forever 21? No, I'm scared. H&M. So this is a size 10 at H&M, which seems like it's gonna be matching with this chart. This is very tough on my waist. For my hips, it works wonders. But in terms of my waist, it's a little small. It might have been in my best interest to grab a size 12 because I do remember I wore a waist cincher when I wore this, and that might have been the reason why that worked really well. So it also depends on what feel you're going for too. If your waist, you want to be very, very tight and have that nice clean cut, this might actually end up working for you. If you don't want to feel like a Victorian woman or a drag queen ready to go on stage, go for something more casual and more comfortable. And in that case, make sure everything is going to fit you, okay? So in my instance, I would have to go with a size 12 in a general sense because at least my waist is a little happier. So now that we have measurements out of the way, now let's try to figure out what skirt is gonna work best for you. In terms of your body, in terms of how your body is shaped, a lot of things are gonna play into this. And for one thing, if you like how something looks on you, you go girl. You do what you feel is best. If you look in a mirror and you go, this looks fantastic, then go for it. But if you're not getting the image you so desire, a lot of these tips might help you. For one thing, you kind of have to dress your age. I don't want to tread too much on this because I think I have youth privilege where I can kind of slip into a lot of things that I kind of want. A lot of skirts are kind of associated, especially skirts, are associated with youth. And what happens is, this happens to cis women too, particularly, what you'll find is when they wear something that is not their age, where they're older and they're wearing something younger, it's almost like they've kind of just been dressing the same all these years and they haven't evolved from it. Like they haven't changed their look. So what happens is your body is always changing. You lose weight, you gain weight, and you grow, right? Your body has changed, but the clothes you're wearing have not. Does that make sense? Your clothes should fit your current body, and in a lot of ways, it should kind of match your age. You're gonna want a skirt that is going to work with your body shape. So when we are talking about body shapes, it's the same thing about face shapes. Everyone has a different structure. Sometimes we have a desire to look a certain way. So with your face shape, typically people are kind of looking for kind of ovular, maybe a little rounder, especially trans women, we want to be a little bit rounder. In terms of body shapes, the hourglass is always what we strive to be. So if you are a different body shape, you use certain garments, use certain clothing to kind of give the illusion of an hourglass. That is typically the desire, okay? One of the issues that a lot of trans women and cross-dressers tend to have is certain body shapes adhere to them. So with a lot of trans women, it tends to be either a V or an apple shape. So a V shape is kind of just what you think it would be. Your upper body is larger, your back is bigger, heavier mass, your shoulders are a little more wide and broad. Kind of think, as an exaggerated example, Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. Like that's a pure V. The apple shape is where you tend to have more of a heavier midsection. The waist is often undefined, typically characterized by a wide torso and shoulders. One thing you have to understand is your body shape is very genetic. I think we all kind of have an idea of what that's like. Like I said, your body is going to change over time. You lose some weight, you gain some, and you age. So when you pick out a skirt, one of the best things you can do is get skirts that basically fit at your natural waist. So there's a good chance you tend to have shorter legs in terms of your proportions. So what fitting at the natural waist does is the skirt goes all the way up, and that creates the thought that you have very, very long legs. There are types of waistlines that I might get into later, but here's just an array of them. A lot of these are gonna give off a different look. So the lower the waistline, the longer your upper body is gonna end up being. And this might not be something you desire. In a lot of ways, you can't go wrong with something that measures below the knees or above. Because what this does is it doesn't create that heavy midsection that kind of goes, okay, that's half of the leg. So that kind of gives the notion that your legs are a little shorter. So when you have a little bit below the knee, it's gonna be shown to be a little bit longer by not showing. When it's above the knee, it kind of elongates your legs, it shows off a little more. So if you do have a larger upper body, especially around here, then you might want to get something that has a lot of flare, because what that tends to do is it creates an inverted V. It kind of captures that mass, it kind of matches it. So in terms of all the types of skirts I listed in the previous video, I listed a little bit as to what could work for you, but here's a general list as to what would be really good for you to give a try. First is the A-line. The A-line is great. It adds instant flare, instant hips, because that's what skirts do. They accentuate the hips with flare, and it's pretty much an inverted V, as in an A. The circle skirt is instantly characterized as girly. It goes whoop, very soft, not angular, and gives you a lot of room, very, very comfortable. The cowl skirt is pretty good too. This is not something you typically see. And by cowl skirt, I'm mainly talking about the ones that have draping motions by the hips, where it adds a little bit more size to the hips if you're struggling with thin hips. Rose skirt works great as well. The way a lot of them kind of wrap like a tulip kind of draws attention to that part, and it is sleek, it defines, it adds some good room for the hips. The high waist is instantly girly and feminine, and due to the thickness of the waistband, it has a nice clean cut that will give that kind of hourglass shape to it. The mini skirt is a staple. Pretty much all the two main dresses I wear are mini skirts, and I've worn them to formal occasions. I've worn them to an interview or two. So we're in a weird spot where hemline standards are very, very different. But mini skirts elongate your legs, it shows them off. That's the reason they've been popular for so many decades. The pencil skirt is fantastic. It is very, very form-fitting, tight, which I love. It shows off the sexiness of your legs without actually showing a whole lot of it. The peplum, like I said, is fantastic. It creates definition where there wouldn't be in the first place. It adds instant flare. The pleated skirt is beautiful. I love it, love it, love it. It adds a lot of room, but if you get it half stitch, it can be very tight fitting at your waist if you so desire to get that feel, and it gives you a lot of movement. Also keep in mind, this is often associated with being very childish, kind of teen-like. It's kind of got the schoolgirl vibe to it. Take your judgment on where you would wear it. And the tutu skirt is beautiful. The material, the flare, it screams girl. Not tight at all, very, very loose and comfortable, but it makes you look super, super classy. Again, in a way, it could be kind of a teen thing if we're going back to like the 50s route. So again, use your judgment on exactly where you'd wear it. Things to not do. Again, this is a little general. Everyone has a different body shape. Some things are gonna look different on you as opposed to somebody else, but always be cautious about a drop waist. So a drop waist is typically known as the lowest waistline. Before you transition, you wore your jeans, you knew where they fit. That's kind of at the drop waist. So the drop waist goes kind of just right above your hips. I'm gonna make a video on this topic. Careful about unisex stuff, especially when you are trying to show to the world that you are a woman. Unisex clothing is kind of a hit and miss. To pass, a lot of it involves going overboard with the femininity. And the drop waist is very, very unisex. It's not instantly feminine. The reason it kind of went with women in fashion, I think, was a lot of feminist ideals. The waistline for women was always very, very high. As it went down, it became more unisex and it felt more empowering because a drop waist makes your torso bigger. So it made women seem a lot more able. What this will do to you is it'll elongate your upper body when you're probably not looking for that. Probably one of the worst things you could do with picking out a skirt is picking something very, very boxy that just kind of fits your angular figure, and also picking a drop waist skirt and going to your knee, like straight across at your knee. What this ends up looking like is a Scotsman. It looks like you're gonna get a bagpipe and go, go, go. There's no sense of definition. There's no sense of elongating the legs. The thing with skirts is, how do I put this? If I were to take my shoulder length and if I were to go like a rectangle down, if my skirt is matching that rectangle, that's really, really bad. It's gonna make you look huge. You wouldn't wanna go something that goes straight like that gives you that blocky figure. You want something that goes a little bit more like this, or you could have something that kind of goes like this at the hips and then kind of goes inward like that. So like I said, boxy stuff, a lot of straight skirts might not be in your favor. They don't really define as well as other skirts can, but give them a try if you want. If it works for you, it works for you. And like I said, micro minis are a little bit of a gamble. Obviously, micro minis are not accepted casually in our culture. And also, the shorter the hemline for you, if you're pre-op, you can't tuck very well. This is the same thing for certain thongs that are pretty much a compilation of strings going around. There's not going to be any room for hiding. So watch out for certain mini skirts as well. Just make sure you can hide everything if you so desire to do that. Whew. That was crazy. You now know all you need to know about picking out the right skirt for you. You know how to measure, you know which ones are probably gonna be in your favor, ones that might so not. This is a big milestone to get your first skirt. It is super, super exciting. So I hope I made this a little less intimidating for you. Now you know what you gotta do in women's sizes, are not super crazy and confusing. There's just certain stuff you gotta be sure of. So thank you so much, girls. I'll see you next week. Take care.